YouTube, this is Dave and I'm coming with another video. This one is going to be part one of an entire series of videos where we build a mashup, building a Microsoft, not a Microsoft CRM, that's a whole different animal, but just a CRM using SharePoint and the tools of M365 outside of using Dynamics. The reason why I'm doing this is not so much that people need to use or build a CRM, but I want to show you what's possible. And a CRM is something that a lot of people who are in business know. They understand what it's used for. For those of you who don't know, it's Customer Relations Manager. It's a tool that is a software tool that people use. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to take the first step and we're going to actually put in place the first SharePoint list in order to be able to create this CRM. I'm going to go through each and every single piece. I'm going to change the format so this video is much quicker. So let's jump right into it. Okay, here we are. We're in the application teams. Why teams? Well, the reason why is I want a SharePoint site dedicated to this CRM mashup. What I did was I created down here the Extreme Widgets CRM team. That is something that you can always name to whatever you want to, for whatever you're trying to accomplish. But here we're building the CRM. The reason why, it gives me a SharePoint site, but it also gives me a way to interact with others if I'm working on a team who are going to interact with the CRM. This allows us to not messy or muddy up the waters of the information captured in the CRM. There's a lot of benefits to this. So this is what I wanted to show you. This is the baseline. We created a Microsoft team, named it, and we actually are going to tie all the SharePoint lists that we create here in the Microsoft team. Okay, here we are on the home page of the SharePoint site that is going to literally house everything for the CRM. This is the SharePoint site that, as you can see from the image up here at the top, that is the Microsoft Teams image that actually identifies that this SharePoint site was created by Microsoft Teams and is actually the back end of a Microsoft team known as Extreme Widgets CRM. So I just wanted to point that out to you because, as everything else, I want to show you step by step. Some of these things you're like, yeah, I understand that. Other things you may not. This is going to be a teaching process from anywhere from SharePoint 101 all the way to SharePoint 201. We're going to go from easy to medium range as far as difficulty. This is one of the things that has been asked repeatedly at different speaking events that I have done, where there seems to be a lack. Either it's too easy or it's too hard. They kind of skip the middle part and kind of figure, oh, they know what they're talking about, or I know that they've done, used SharePoint before. They have no problem doing this, and they're not realizing there's multiple steps involved, and sometimes people may or may not know what those steps may be because of the fact that they do not use SharePoint as their day job. They have other things to do. SharePoint is a good tool that they use, however, that's about the end of it. Okay, here we are. We are in the list of customers. Can't have a customer relational management database if you don't have customers. Now, there's a couple things that you have to keep in mind, and what we're doing specifically for today for this video is customers, meaning the customer as a whole, as an entity, not individuals within that entity. So for example, I am going to build widgets for Coca-Cola, and I'm working with John Smith. Coca-Cola is the customer. John Smith is a contact of my customer, within my customer. Something to keep in mind, that is what I'm going to make sure I differentiate. So when I say customers, it's going to be the company that we're going to interact and work with. Like I said, Coca-Cola would be the company. So as you can see, I've got a bunch of different things, but let's actually go into the back end and go through each individual column that I've created so that way you can see my reasoning and my thought process. Now, there's a possibility I may have forgotten some information specific to the customer overall. If we do identify or locate that as an issue, we can always improve upon it. But the deeper in we go to building this CRM using a mashup technology, there may be a domino effect. It's like, okay, I added a column here. I may need to do things later on. And so we want to be clear that you have to always kind of keep that in mind. If you add things, feel free to add things. Don't be afraid. You're just going to have to think things through and make sure you map things out so that way you can do it correctly. Here we are in the columns section in the list settings, and here we can see a bunch of different columns I've created. A lot of them are required. It's like there's no point in me creating a customer if I don't actually have the information I'm looking for. So one of the things I want to very much so point out is the company name. In the company name, you're going to actually see that is actually the title. That is the column that came with the library when it was first created. You will always, when you create a list, the first column will always be labeled title. That's just how it is. That's part and parcel. There has to be some level of congruency in order for this to work correctly. Let me point out HQ address, address 2, city, state, and zip code. I have an underscore instead of spaces. That is to make things easier. So if we decide to create some Power Automate functionality, we will be able to interact with the columns more easily than having to use a underscore x0020 underscore in order to indicate where the spaces are. That gets kind of tedious, it's messy, it's easier to read if you just have the underscores in Power Automate, something that I was looking into the future for when we get to that point. You can also see main phone, the fax phone, and we figured those were going to be the primaries. This is anything and everything that has to do with the customer specifically. Let's go ahead and jump into each single one. Let me explain what I did, and then we'll go from there. Okay, let's start with the address. The reason why we need an address, there's always a street address. Even if it's a P.O. box, whatever the case may be, every single customer, every single company, I should say, does have an address. There's some sort of headquarters. If it doesn't have brick and mortar, there's going to be a P.O. box. So, for example, there might be a company that's based out of someone's garage, for example, like a small woodworking company. Well, that's okay. They're most likely not going to broadcast what their actual home address is. So what they'll do is they'll use a P.O. box in order to protect their identity, if you will, especially in this day and age. So we get the headquarters address. We can always change it here. So if I wanted to at this point, I can actually just go HQ space address. This is not going to change what the back end. This is not going to affect when I use Power Automate. Oh, now it's HQ underscore X0020 underscore. That doesn't become a thing. And here's the reason why. That once the column is created, it has that, and it'll always remember this. All we're changing is the vanity of this particular column. That's why we were able to change title to company name, and it's not going to affect anything. It's still considered the title. So I just wanted you to know that. If you want to learn more about that, I have a list video. Feel free to look at that video, and that kind of explains everything that's going on. Single line of text, that's fine. We're requiring this column that contains information, also correct. Enforcing unique values. This is an interesting one. If you enforce unique values, you're actually saying, look, no one else can have the same street address. You've got to be careful in this case. Because we're an address, we do not want to turn that on. Now the company name, on the other hand, we did turn that on, and here's the reason why. We only want one customer or client with the same name. It's not normal for companies to have the exact same name, something to keep in mind. So this is what we did for the title, otherwise company name, is we actually turned that on. The maximum number of characters, 255, is plenty. That's the default. There's no reason to change it unless you really feel it's necessary to actually make that change. And again, default value, we're not going to put anything in there. So this is what we have done specifically for the HQ address. And because I took the underscore out of there, let's go ahead and hit OK. The next one, HQ address 2. Why address 2? Well, for some large companies, the situation actually demands it. They may be on a huge city block, and it might be a high rise, and there are suites on per floor. Well, yeah, it might be 100 Pennsylvania Avenue. However, there's 40 floors to this building. Well, guess what? You have to identify which floor it's on. So something like suite, 403, meaning the fourth floor, the third suite. There's all different ways of handling this. There's always almost always a need in a CRM to have a second column name for the second address. So, but let's go ahead and clean this one up as well. And this one, and perfect. Again, single line of text. We're not going to require this one. Not every single company is going to have the need for second address bar. So because that, we're not going to do that. Again, the default 255 characters is fine. Default text is fine. Let's go ahead and approve that. City. This should look pretty straightforward. Same thing, single line of text. Yeah, we will definitely know which city the headquarters is going to be located in, so therefore we're going to require it. Again, default. We're not making this complex. It does not need to be complex when you're building a solution. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for state. Again, no changes. Single line of text. Yes, it's required. We know where the city is, we know where the state is. So therefore, we're going to go ahead and do this. Now, we could add country, and we're going to do that in just a moment. So let's go ahead and continue on. Default values, zip code. There we are. Again, single line of text. We're going to require this to have information. No, we're not having unique or enforcing unique values. Default again, default again. Now the reason why I'm not turning this into a number slot is because it depends on where you're doing business. For example, I believe Japan and Canada are good examples where the zip code may actually have alphabet characters involved as well. Something to keep in mind. Or you might have the 9-digit zip code that you want to capture. Well, the 9-digit is the first 5 digits followed by a dash by the last 4 digits. We want to make sure that it'll accommodate in that scenario or situation. So that is the HQ zip code. Main phone. It's very, usually for large companies, it might be an 800 number to get to the front desk or something to that effect. So we're going to want that. Again, single line of text. We're going to want this to be required, and then the rest are going to be default as well. So that will do it for our main phone. Fax phone. I know, I get it. Not a lot, fax is kind of outdated. A lot of fax is now digital. People can do it literally through Outlook in some cases with some plugins. There's all different ways of handling fax. But that being said, there are some larger companies that still have a requirement and a need to utilize the fax machine. Few and far between, but we want to accommodate for that as well. Single line of text, definitely not requiring this because the chances may not be in our favor as far as them having a fax machine, and the rest are default as well. We cleaned up the column name so that it looks nice. One of the things I left out on purpose for this video was the fact that we want to add one more column called country. The reason why I want to put in country is because just in case we do end up selling widgets to a country outside the United States of America, that is a possibility. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, a single line of text is fine. We're not going to require it, or we could. You know what? Let's go ahead and require it. So we will require this, but we're going to also put a default because the majority of our work is going to be done in the USA. So let's make that as a thing. So we're going to make a default where it's USA. There we go. Required, yes. It has a default. And then let's see here. We'll make the maximum number of characters also left at default. Good. Okay, and there we have it. We have our CRM customers list that has been created. Not too tough. Remember, this is literally just the first step in what we're going to do over the series. The series is going to contain multiple videos, and I want to keep each of them short so that way you guys are able to watch them easily, be able to follow along, maybe even build something of your own. It doesn't have to, like I said, doesn't have to be a CRM. It could be something completely different. You could make a phone book. It could be a celebratory anniversary, work anniversary thing. It does not matter. Your imagination is literally the limit. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please leave your comments down below if you have any ideas or if I missed something. Like I said, I'm doing this on the fly. You may work in the CRM. You're like, you know what, that's great, but you forgot this. If I forgot this, then you let me know, and we'll make sure that we make it a reality. This is Dave. I hope to see you guys again in the next video on this series. Take care.